Welcome to our channel. We're so happy to have you here. Don't forget to subscribe and help us hit our goal of 100,000 subscribers. Masofa, right. A Basuto chief with his standard bearer. During his youth, he fought in numerous conflicts against neighboring tribes and European colonists, circa 1890s. Marilyn Monroe and Queen Elizabeth were both born in the same year, 1926. Here is a photo of the two meeting in 1956, when Marilyn was filming The Prince and the Showgirl in the UK. Pope Pius XIX, last sovereign lord of the Papal State before the Italian unification, giving his blessing to King Francis II of Naples, Sicily. Also kneeling on the left is my ancestral relative, Colonel Athanasi Charette de la Contrie of the Papal Zouaves. In 1966, 6 Tongan teenage boarding school students decided to run away on stolen boat. They aimed to sail Fiji, but a storm left them shipwrecked on the uninhabited islands of Ata Lol. In 1941, Ruth Lee, a Chinese restaurant hostess, would fly a Chinese flag while sunbathing so she wouldn't be mistaken for Japanese. The photo was taken on a beach in Miami. There were still Civil War veterans alive during Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration. In fact, in 1938, Roosevelt met with them at a ceremony commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, as seen in the photo below, at which he gave a speech to dedicate the Eternal Light Peace Memorial. The ceremony was also captured on film and shown on newsreels in movie theaters. 2nd June, 1953. Elizabeth II was crowned in Westminster Abbey, marking the beginning of a reign that would last 70 years, 7 months, and 6 days, the longest in British history. Here she is in the late 60s, early 70s. Born to a Jewish family in northwestern Germany, Solomon Perel was captured by the Nazis in 1941. For the next 4 years, he pretended to be German, joined the Hitler Youth, and even dated a fanatic Nazi to hide his identity. His incredible survival story inspired the 1990 film Europa, Europa. The Victorian era is so far removed from us now that it would be impossible to know people from that era. However, in the 70s, there were still some Victorian people alive. Below is a screenshot of Frances Effie Jones, who was in her 90s at the time and had been a teenager in the 1890s. She was part of a 1970 BBC interview about what it was like to live in Victorian England. A behind-the-scenes photo from the set of the NBC sitcom Caroline in the City, which exists in the same universe as Friends. Matthew Perry's Chandler Bing made a cameo on the show, while on that same episode, Jonathan Silverman's character Jonathan Elliott from another NBC sitcom, The Single Guy, also appeared, further linking the shows. This 1991 photograph captures Princess Diana holding the hand of an AIDS patient. In a time when hysteria about the virus was still high, her holding his hand without a glove was significant. This is a photo of the head of the Statue of Liberty on display at the Champ de Mars Park in Paris during the 1878 Exposition Universelle. It was placed there to help with fundraising for the construction costs of the statue. The farmhouse that once occupied corner of the 84th Street and Broadway in Manhattan was known as the Brennan Farm. This rural retreat became home to renowned poet Edgar Allan Poe and his wife, who moved there in hopes that the fresh country air would help ease Poe's tuberculosis. 1840s. This photo was taken in 1937 by a woman who had concealed a camera in her handbag. Cameras were not allowed in the Supreme Court. As far as anyone knows, this is one of only 2 photographs that have been taken when the court was in session. No photos of the Titanic's grand staircase exist, well, at least before it sank. The photos we see of the grand staircase are actually from the Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic, which had an identical staircase. The 2 ships were built side by side and were nearly identical. The final episode of Friends is the most watched show of the entire 2000s. 52.5 million viewers watched it. This is a pic of people watching the finale live in Times Square. French destroyer Bourrasque sinks after straying into a minefield off Dunkirk. Crammed below decks are hundreds of who will go down with her. After the explosion, one soldier's leg was trapped by a torpedo tube. He told his comrades not to waste their time and to save themselves. 30th of May, 1940. This is a photo of the Champ de Mars nearly a decade later in 1887, and it may be hard to make out, but those are two of the steel struts of the Eiffel Tower, early in its construction. The Palace of Fine Arts that stands today in San Francisco was actually built in the 60s. It was originally built for the 1915 Panama Pacific Exposition to showcase art and celebrate the city's recovery from the 1906 earthquake. However, it was only meant to be a temporary structure, made of plaster and wood that deteriorated over time. By the 1960s, it had to be completely torn down and rebuilt with steel and concrete to preserve it. Salvador Dalí and Walt Disney might strike you as the unlikeliest of friends. However, the two were not only good friends who mutually admired each other, but they also had a lot in common. Here's a photo of them when Walt went to visit him in Spain in 1957. Photo of the Lykov family who, in 1936, fled to the Siberian wilderness to escape persecution. They lived in isolation for 40 years, unaware of events like Wubby-Witu, until they were discovered in 1978. During a 1961 food shortage, Akulina Lykov sacrificed herself to starvation so her children could survive. This is a screenshot from the first TV drama, The Queen's Messenger, which aired in 1928. For context, that was the same year Mickey Mouse was introduced to the world. The production was an experiment between GE and a station in Schenectady, New York. And yes, television sets existed in the 1920s, but they were extremely rare and had very tiny screens. This is a photo of a New York City set built in the backlot of a studio in Hollywood, California in the 1920s. There are a lot of details they carefully recreated, including an elevated train, which was still commonly used as a lot the city's subways had not been built yet. This photographer captured George Willig scaling the exterior of the World Trade Center's South Tower in 1977. The climb took 3.5 hours and resulted in his arrest as well as $1.10 in fines. The iconic Hollywood sign was actually built in 1923 to advertise the Hollywoodland real estate development in the hills below it. The sign was originally only supposed to be up for 18 months, but it became a visual symbol of Los Angeles. Throughout most of the golden age of Hollywood, the Hollywood sign read Hollywoodland, with the land part only being removed in 1949. Louis Vuitton's rich, storied history is often overshadowed by its continued relevance and desirability today, so it's easy to forget that the brand's legacy of luxury stretches back far. This 1930 Vogue photo of their iconic monogrammed luggage is a testament to how long Louis Vuitton has been synonymous with elegance and exclusivity. The liberation created a period of lawlessness, exploited by those wanting vengeance against Germany and its collaborators. The practice was not localized to France. The photos here were taken in Holland and Belgium. 1944. Much like we'd throw 90s, 80s, or zeros nostalgic-themed parties today, people in the 50s threw 1920s-themed parties. Below are a couple of photos from the 1950s of a 1920s-themed party, complete with everyone wearing period-appropriate costumes and the woman on the left doing the Charleston. On February 8, 1943, Nazis hung 17-year-old Lepa Radic for being a Yugoslavian partisan during World War II. When they asked her the names of her companions, she replied, "You will know them when they come to avenge me." This is a photo of the real-life Christopher Robin. Yes, his name is Christopher Robin. And Winnie the Pooh, named Winnie after a bear Christopher saw in the London Zoo. Winnie the Pooh author A. Milne, who was Christopher's father, was inspired by him to write the books. It was actually his mother who created the Winnie the Pooh world, saying, "It was my mother who used to come and play in the nursery with me and tell him about the things I thought and did. It was she who provided most of the material for my father's books." If this house looks familiar, it's because it's the Dibble House, which is featured in the background of Grant Wood's iconic painting, American Gothic. This is how the house looked like in 2005. However, since then, the Iowa house has been repaired and looks just as it did in the 1930 painting. You can actually visit and tour it.